So it's a Saturday evening. It's the 27th of January, 2024. And we're a little over 3 weeks into the winter retreat period, so very much feeling that time is passing and we're very much in the middle of the winter retreat. And so far, I feel very good about it. It's always interesting going into the winter retreat, and there's that sense of setting sail, and now perhaps there is that sense that we're very much in the middle of the journey, sailing across the Mahasamut, the great ocean, the ocean of suffering, trying to cross the ocean of suffering. And when we practice a lot, we practice a lot of sitting and walking meditation, and we listen to teachings and contemplate a lot, then it can happen that the mind can start to be very courageous and feel like things are going well. Feel like the mind can actually start courageously letting go of things that have hindered and obstructed us in the past. We can start letting go of those things that are the causes of suffering, things that perhaps we couldn't let go of before. However, that being said, when we start to call into question our desires, cravings, unwholesome cravings that hinder us and cause us, suffering, dukkha, then things start to get interesting, because we may have been inspired to come to the practice at first that, that makes perfect sense, give up craving and suffering. But then when we actually practice following that inspiration, it's not so easy. We might be very inspired, and we might even logically, rationally think, I can do this. I'll just put forth the effort and I'll just do it. And then the karmic baggage comes up. Everybody has to deal with their karmic baggage, and then it ends up being this long road to the end of suffering. It's not something that can just be quickly done, or letting go. Developing wisdom can't be done by an act of will. It's through the practice and the development of patience and generosity and meditation, all of these things. And it's a long journey, it's a long road. But to not become disheartened, if we are able to start going against and actually letting go of some of our desires, that the paradox is that, then things are actually easier. It's like Longpo Cha, one of his teachings, saying that practice is really difficult. Why is it difficult? It's because of craving. Once we don't have craving, then it's not difficult. So we suffer because of craving. Kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, these three types of craving. That's in the very basic formulation of the Four Noble Truths, the samudaya, the cause of suffering. And nobody wants to suffer. Suffering by its nature is something we don't want. It's something unpleasant. It's something we don't want to have. And suffering comes about, according to the formulation of the Four Noble Truths, through craving. It comes about through craving. So we don't want suffering. Nobody wants suffering. And the Buddha comes along and says suffering is caused by these three types of craving. And nobody wants to let go of craving. So nobody wants to suffer, but also nobody wants to stop suffering, or very few people want to stop suffering through letting go of craving. So craving by its very nature doesn't want to be let go of. It's been the king of our hearts since time immemorial, and it doesn't want to get off of its throne. So therein lies I don't know, how does that saying go? Therein lies the tale. Therein, there you have it. So what do we do? But the suttas, it says one of the wonderful and marvelous things about the Dhamma is that the Buddha teaches the Dhamma about giving up craving, and some people actually do want to do it and are willing to put forth the effort. So that's what we're trying to do. There's going to be difficulty, there's going to be unpleasantness. We can ask ourselves, so with the practice we have to become very, very flexible. The mind has to become very malleable and very bright, very malleable, very able to flow into different situations, very, very patient. We have to cultivate very deep patience vast like the sea, and have a long enduring mind and do what is difficult to do. It's difficult to give up craving, to be able to let go. And we at least have to call these things into question. And also things like our views and our opinions, our perceptions, all of this needs to be called into question. Is that really the case? Is it really so? All of our cravings and attachments, we have to be able to ask, is that so? Is that really going to make me happy? And even if it does make me happy or is gratifying temporarily, is that happiness going to last? So when desire comes along and says, this is going to be good for sure, then you can say, is that so? And the desires are very compelling. So when we start to go against desire, there's some desires, it's not a big problem, we can go against them. But then there's the really deep karmic desires and longings and cravings and these life-affirming and you could say maybe very, very strong, very deeply rooted desires and cravings. And those things, calling those into question, going against those things, that's going to take barami, that's going to take a great cultivation of the path. And those are the very things which are going to pull us away from the path. So that's where it gets interesting, where the things that are very convincing come up, where we might think, oh, I intuitively feel this is the way I'm supposed to go. And yet, if we look at the teachings, it might be antithetical to the path, but we might feel I'm a very intuitive person. I intuitively feel that this is the way I'm supposed to go, not the way of letting go of craving. So we have to be careful at that point. Mara is very intuitive. Mara knows what we're thinking. So we have to be very careful to learn how to align our practice. Dhamma nu Dhamma patipada, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, or meaning practicing Dhamma in accordance with the path as it's laid out by the Lord Buddha. This is very important. I intuitively feel this is right for me. That's the hardest type of mind state to teach. How can you argue with that? Well, it's the intuition. It must be right. But it's not. It's because it's following craving. It's not right according to Dhamma. Or you could say maybe it's true, but it's not right. Or it's right, but it's not true. Whereas the Dhamma is both right and true. So during the winter retreat, though, when we meditate more, we can develop this very courageous mindset where I'll do it. I'll try to go against craving. When these things come up in the mind, I'll question it, see if I can let it go. But it is actually almost counterintuitive when we really try to cultivate that Dhamma nu Dhamma patipada, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. The Buddha said this is one of the factors of stream entry, is to practice Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, practice Dhamma in line with Dhamma. So what does that mean? How do we do that? this is where we get to more of the deeper, more profound aspect of what is Dhamma. There's a story which Longpa Pasano used to tell fairly often, and I like to repeat it sometimes, of a vignette of an old Tibetan monk, a Rinpoche, and his student. His student is very, very sincere, and so the student is like, okay, I'm going to do some meditation retreat, I'm going to do some special practices, I'm going to get to the Dhamma, I'm going to get to some of these attainments that they talk about. So he goes to his teacher and he's like, okay, I'm gonna do a lot of sitting meditation. Just gonna devote myself to sitting meditation. And the teacher says, sitting meditation is good, but Dhamma practice is better. And the student, what does he mean by that? So he goes and does a lot of sitting meditation. And after a period of time, a number of weeks, he decides, this sitting meditation, it doesn't seem to be really leading anywhere. Maybe my mind is getting concentrated. Maybe things are going kind of okay, but I don't seem to be making any breakthroughs in my practice. Maybe I should be practicing walking meditation. So he goes to his teacher and says, I think what I need to do is a lot of walking meditation. And his teacher says, walking meditation is good, but Dhamma practice is better. He says, what does he mean by that? He goes and devotes himself to walking meditation. Same thing happens, and goes back to his teacher after a long period of time of doing walking meditation. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is working. I'm going to devote myself to bowing. So I'm going to do this, what they call it, ngondro in the Tibetan, 100,000 or more bows. I'm going to devote myself to bowing, purify my obscurations. Bowing is good, but Dhamma practice is better. So what does he mean by that? So he's bowing. Same thing happens. He's getting into it, but it's really kind of, there doesn't seem to be any major enlightenment experiences or breakthroughs. Okay, maybe I'll devote myself to chanting. So same thing happens. Chanting is good. Dhamma practice is better. So he goes and does his chanting. Sure enough, same thing happens. There's no big major breakthroughs in his practice. Goes back and I tried sitting, I tried walking, I tried bowing, chanting. You keep saying Dhamma practice is better. Aren't all these things Dhamma practice? He's like, well, all those things are good, but they're not, in and of themselves, they're not Dhamma practice. And he's like, well, what is Dhamma practice? And he says something like, Dhamma practice is when you renounce this life. Renounce this life, O monk. So that's a Dhamma nu Dhamma patipada. It doesn't mean take your life, it doesn't mean kill yourself. We don't want to misunderstand it in that way. Renounce this life, give up this life, give up attachment to this life. Just take it as a day and a night. That's what Longpo Cha came to, is that he came to a point where he was just going to practice as if his life was just this day and this night, and completely focus on the practice. The question has come up a few times, what is mindfulness? Can we explain a little bit more about mindfulness as we go about our day? And this is really in line with that sense of Dhamma nu Dhamma patipada as well, is that when we just put our heart into every activity and we just really do our best with every activity, it's so much more fulfilling, so much more joyful, so much more fruitful when we put our heart into it, when we're not hoping for some sort of result, but we're just doing it because it needs to be done. The samana is the one who does what needs to be done. It's like that Tibetan monk in the story. He's trying to get something from his practice. from his sitting practice, walking practice, bowing practice, chanting practice. And yet, can we practice just for the sake of practice? Dhamma nudhamma patipada. There's a story of Longpa Liam also coming to this conclusion, thinking, he's been practicing, and having the thought during his sitting meditation, why do we actually practice? What am I doing? And then the answer coming right away. And this happened for Longpo Cha too, and I think it's later in that book in Still Forest Pool. We practice just for the sake of the practice. We practice to practice. And I really do think that's that description, a very accurate description of Dhamma nudhamma patipada. Because that's when the path becomes very focused on a single point. That's what it's about. It's practicing just for the sake of the practice. So when we say something like, renounce this life, it might sound a bit bleak, grim. Of course, that's not how we want to be relating to the practice. It's a very pure, joyful thing, this Dhamma nudhamma patipada. And really, we gain so much. We gain so much by coming into the present, by putting our heart into every activity, by cultivating mindfulness as much as possible with whatever we're doing. We gain everything by doing that. We don't lose out. There's only gain. There's not loss in doing that. Or you could say that the one who is mindful, the one who puts their heart into every activity, each day is better. Or you could say it's like the quote from Longpo Cha, they've got this up at Wapananachat, this quote that you don't have to go looking for the Noble Eightfold Path. When your heart is ready, the Noble Eightfold Path will come looking for you. You don't have to go looking for peace. When the heart is ready, peace will come looking for you. So that sense of just ripening the heart, it can't happen just through our forcing it to happen through an act of will. It'd be like taking a fruit. It'd be like taking a mango and hoping that it's ripe quickly so we can eat it. But if we just try to eat a green mango, it's just going to be inedible, sour. It's just going to ripen at its own time. Or like planting a tree and watching it grow. Our job is just to water it and tend to it, make sure that insects don't eat it, and it's going to grow at its own pace. And eventually, after a long period of time, depending on the type of tree, it's going to bear fruit, and that fruit will become ripe and we can eat that fruit. But that tree, we can't rush that growth, so it's very much like the ripening of the mind, the building of parami, and the path of practice. It's not just going to come through getting the right answer on the multiple choice exam. It's not going to come through just figuring it out mentally. It's much more profound than that. If liberation from samsara could come about through just figuring it out mentally, I think so many people would be totally freed from suffering by now. But comes about through that ripening of the mind, and ripening of the practice, ripening of these wholesome qualities. So this winter retreat period, we can really be focusing on the cultivation of parami, and we're doing this as a community, cultivating the schedule, cultivating the sitting and walking meditation, the patient endurance, or whatever studies we might be involved in, whatever activities we might be involved in the monastery, and then the winter retreat crew, also serving the Sangha, which is also another completely valid way of cultivating parami, helping ripen those wholesome qualities. And it's kind of a genius way the Buddha set things up with the alms mendicants, the ordained Sangha, receiving food, unsolicited food offerings, but then also for the lay community who serves the Sangha, that's actually also the path. That's also the path. So everybody's on the path. We're all in this together. It's just different parts of the path being cultivated. And the monks need to be generous too. Without that cultivation of service, that cultivation of generosity, we're not going to make it very far on the path as well. Anyone who's practiced for a long time can testify to that. I remember spending my third Vasa at Wapananachat, having that opportunity to be in Thailand for the first time and just feeling so good in Thailand. And I had come from Abhayagiri and just had spent the last year or so working very, very hard at Abhayagiri. And I was always, ever since coming here, I had some skills with being able to help out with construction work and also was willing to learn how to be the water monk. And so had helped out quite a bit with expanding the size of the water system here and undertook this massive project. I had asked permission from Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Amaro to undertake this massive project during my second Vasa. It was tapping into the well at the ridge and then looking after crews of workers to bring the water lines down and expand, upgrade our water system. And it was this huge undertaking, and I was just really exhausted, fed up by the end of the project. Or at least even halfway through the project, I was exhausted and fed up. And remember Longpa Liam visiting at that time. This is the first time I got to meet Longpa Liam. I'd still never been to Thailand, but he visited here, and I remember asking him, and this monk Ajahn Prateep was living here at the time and translated for me. And Longpa Liam was staying in the duplex, which was the nicest kuti in the monastery at the time. And so we went to go see him, offer massage, foot massage in the evening, and told him about this project and just said, actually this is backing up to before entering Vasa, so it was really when I was just starting out with this project, and then it got completed during the Vasa. So I was still one Vasa, I hadn't entered my second Vasa yet. And said, I'm doing this project, and it's a big project, and I just feel fed up, and I feel like doing this work, my mind gets upset and angry and frustrated. Isn't it better to not do that kind of work and thus not experience that kind of upset, frustration, and anger? And Longpa Liam said, no, without a doubt, it's better to do it. It's better to do it and then learn how to come to terms with those things. He said, this is something like a water system. This is mahadana. This is something that will be a foundation for your practice. And so then that always stuck with me, that short teaching that he said, without a doubt, keep going, keep doing it, keep doing that project. And then I remember going to Thailand, just feeling so at home in Thailand, actually arriving in Thailand, feeling like I'd come home, and just getting to spend the Vasa at Wapananachat. And there was 5 monks who had ordained. I was at their ordination ceremony. It was right after I arrived in Thailand, and I remember Ajahn Nyaniko was the abbot of Wapananachat at the time, and he had a very close relationship with Longpo Plian, who would then visit often and give encouragement to the community, and giving encouragement to these newly ordained monks. It was a group of 5. Now it was Analio, Tanio, Kanchano. Who were the others? A couple others. Kumaro, one other. But at that time, I remember Ajahn Nyaniko actually giving a talk. It was around that same theme that the advice Longpa Liam had given me. He said, all of you people here in the monastery want to, you're intent on getting samadhi. You're wondering, some of you might be wondering, well, even though I meditate a lot, I'm not sort of, quote, getting samadhi. He said, if your mind isn't getting very peaceful, give more, give more. Yeah. Practice dana. That also stuck with me. I could really see the truth of that. It's so true. We might think that engaging in activity or work in the monastery is an obstruction to our practice, but it's actually the opposite is true. You can see from the long-term effects of dana. And then I remember that year actually getting to spend time at Pujamgam and Dowdam, and then my last month in Thailand was at Wat Pah Pong. I got to spend a month at Wat Pah Pong, and I got to be around Luang Por Liam again. And I was very grateful to Ajahn Kavali at that time, who was 8 vasas, and he was living at Wat Pah Pong. And he did a lot of translating for me, so it really enriched my experience there. I couldn't yet have very much comprehension of the Thai language at that time. And remember after that month, taking leave of Luang Por Liam, getting some advice about practice, and Ajahn Kavali translating for me. And then Luang Por Liam said, "Oh, and Anumodana." Later on, Ajahn Kavali said, "Why did he say Anumodana to you? What did you do?" But I'm sure it was about that water project, because he must have remembered it. Just felt so good, felt so uplifted by that. And when Luang Por Liam speaks, he doesn't just throw out empty praises. He everything he says has substance. So anumodana means to delight in the goodness being done, and something like doing a water system upgrade, that's a long-term benefit for convenience for the community, something that we still reap the fruits of. And so it's not like, not for myself getting like, oh yeah, I did this great thing, but just that sense of this is a foundation for practice. Dana, generosity, is a foundation for meditation practice. Generosity is a foundation for right practice. Something to keep in mind. So even during the winter retreat, when we're doing more formal practice, that sense of generosity can still be cultivated. And we can be generous with our meditations. So say like the 3 weeks we just completed of group practice in the hall, some of the monastic community were really diligent and really intent in being in the hall. That's an act of generosity. That's inspiring for others. Inspires others to practice. So when we push ourselves in the meditation practice, that can also be an act of generosity. So these are some things to consider, some things to think about. I feel very good about the state of the community right now, the monastic community, the lay community, and feel that this is a very good place to be, where we can develop ourselves, develop our practice. So I wish everybody well, and I'll leave it there for this evening.